All set?
No, because this week I tried to go here, but
She's got it. Yeah, she has the credit. No. Hi, welcome to Neighborhood News. I'm John Sylvia, and this is Carlos Caesar. How's it going, Carlos?
Good. And it's back to. It's nice to be back again. One more week. We're here to do another neighborhood news.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what happens every week, we start with some announcements.
Yep.
We have some announcements.
Yep. We have actually June 23rd at 8:30. There's going to be a cleanup at Kennedy Park, the Overlook. So if you're interested in helping out, just go down there June 23rd, 8:30. I'm sure they'll appreciate any extra hands. And also the other thing was on the that bike path, the Quikasham bike path, that is going to be on the 19th, and that's going to be at City Hall at 6 o'clock. And again, that's really important to get out there. These are the kind of things that we want to come into Fall River, these bike paths. This is the sort of stuff that brings middle-class families back into an area, and that's really what we need here in Fall River. So make a point to go there, let our elected officials and everybody know that this is an important thing for Fall River.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's going to be right at City Hall, and it's on the first floor.
Yep.
On the 19th.
Correct, 19th.
So,
I believe that's a Wednesday too, right? It was a Wednesday.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But just would be important if people don't miss that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we back in class.
Yep.
We look like we're in class. We've been a joke here behind the cameras because we both dress up the same today.
Yeah,
and
we're twins.
Today we're twins, and it's funny because we didn't talk before the show. We don't know what to dress, but that's how things happen sometimes.
That's it. And then
we just you need to let me know what numbers you're going to play this week, so I can play the same numbers too. Maybe we're going to be lucky.
Absolutely.
Both of us.
Absolutely. And you know, the other thing is we all brought our books, right?
Yeah.
Everybody brought
We
their
all
books,
set for
which
our
is kinda
class
funny.
today. We are all set for our class today. We have the books and the teacher's here.
So we can introduce Stefani Koorey. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And she's got her book too. So
yes, but I'm not wearing blue and tan. So.
I know. Well, you're the one that brought the twins thing up, but that's fine. We're not going to take it personally. So you wrote this interesting book.
Yes.
And if I could just start by asking you a question, what made you become interested in Fall River history to write a book like this?
I've always been interested in Fall River history from before I moved here. I was born and raised in an Orlando, Florida area, but I was interested in Fall River because of Lizzie Borden and the history of that case from a distance, because I think everybody in the world has heard of Lizzie Borden in the entire world. And so I was interested in that case, and I'm less so these days, and mostly she branched me out into other areas. And one of those areas was actually Victorian American history, turn of the century Fall River especially, and then specifically Fall River. So I have turned my attention completely away from that case and into the history of this city, which I find unendingly fascinating. Mm-hmm. It's not like anything that I'm used to, and it's a New England story, but it's a specific story to this region and to this South Coast region. It's fascinating.
And probably before we even start talking about how the book came about and how you became interested in Fall River history, is how did you find us? We are so small.
No.
How
You're
did
very
you
famous,
find us?
though. Fall Rivers are very famous. How did I find you? Well, I fell in love with somebody who lives here, and that's why I moved here. So It's still going strong, so it's not like I fell in love with
So
it.
you're not going to move soon.
No. I'm here now. 5 years.
But Carlos, getting back to what Stephanie was saying, I think that we take that for granted here. A lot of people with that Lizzie Borden thing, people come here from Australia,
Oh, yes.
from the UK, from
Germany,
Ireland,
yes.
Germany, that know about Fall River, and we are like, oh, this is Fall River, who wants to come here? But a lot of people come here, and I think this book, which I've already read, which was very good.
Thank you.
There's a real positive spin on this. It talks about our history, how it wasn't always pretty, but there is a part in here that talks about how, we determine our own destiny. And I don't know if I'm taking
No,
your own
that's
words,
absolutely
but
true.
And
Yeah.
I thought that was a good part in here, that we can determine our history and get out of this whole situation that we're in now of having a high unemployment rate. So I think that was a real positive spin on that.
Yeah, I think that there is a positive story behind it all. And, people don't come here like they may come to Lowell and understand the history of the mill system. Because the mill museum experience is in Lowell. So they don't come to Fall River for that. They do come to Fall River for, of course, the Battleship Cove, which is remarkably, does very well. For people interested in that era of history. And then the other side of it is, I think, Lizzie, but she's not in this book at all, so we don't need to talk about her. But the thing about Fall River is that it's, and I spoke to you about this earlier, but it's true, it's always been like this.
Yep.
That's something that I learned by writing this book. I always thought, or I assumed, I guess, that where we find ourselves today in the situation we find ourselves is a specific moment in time based on personalities of people who may, it may be political, it may be social, it may be cultural, but it's always been like this. Fall River has not necessarily evolved beyond what it was, and that's not a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not making a judgment on it, but it was a big surprise to me. For instance, the emphasis on economic development in terms of business development, tearing down buildings, building new buildings. That's always been a Fall River thing. The idea of preservation is a new idea, not an old idea. Other communities, they focus on things like that and look at the arts and look at preservation and look at their natural resources and their history as economic development tools to bring people to their cities. Fall River doesn't look at anything like that, in case you haven't noticed.
And I'm just wondering, what do you think that we could do to finally embrace this?
It has to be political. It has to have a political will behind it. And the history of the city shows there's never been that political will. So it's not just now, it's been the case since the city was founded. And I don't know if that means fresh blood. I don't know if it's a tipping point that may happen once artists come into the city and make it their own, or whether the choo-choo comes and we get the Boston crowd in who then decide this is a bedroom community for them and they make the city over with or without our input because they've got the money to do so because they're buying the land. I mean, that's also a fate that may happen to Fall River.
And you had to study a lot to pick what you're gonna put on your book.
Yes.
And I like the book because you went not just in one neighborhood, but you study different neighborhoods. And in this city, every neighborhood has a point that should be in the book. It has a history to
Yes,
tell.
Absolutely. It's a
To
city
tell.
of neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Yes.
Through the study that you did you wish that we still had something
Oh, yes.
because you didn't have enough information to put on a book?
Well, they asked me when I marketed the book, when they were marketing the book, they sent me a sheet of paper and they said, I want you to list every address of every picture that's in the book that's still there so that we can go to that location and try to get them to sell the book, because often a business would love to sell the book because their building is in the picture. I sent them back a blank sheet because there's nothing there. And the buildings that are there are vacant, some of them, that are still in existence. So it was sort of a sad commentary on the city that I couldn't provide them with the resources to market the book within the city itself, because those places are gone. And it is a sad thing. You know, there are a couple of, you know, choice places that still exist that may see the wrecking ball, and there's those that fight against that but we'll see. You know, we'll see.
On the book, I was happy to see that you went to the Flint and right, that you went to the Flint.
Yes, your neighborhood.
To my neighborhoods, and you show a couple of pictures that right on the next day after I had the book signed from you, I had to take a picture.
I saw that.
How looked now,
right?
To compare with the picture that you put on your book.
Yeah, the Rolling Rock and things like that.
Exactly.
That you took pictures of.
And until today, and I'm around for over 20 years on the Flint, I never noticed. And I went there and I took a picture of. On the book, Lafayette.
Yes.
You talk about Lafayette, and you talk about how they had to change the horse.
Well, the horse changed.
Exactly.
And at some point in history, it turned around.
Exactly.
And it didn't do it by itself. And so there is a mythology about that statue in the city. And it depends on who you talk to as to what they say is the story. So it was almost a small side story about trying to find the information about how and when this statue was turned to face the opposite direction. Because there is such a belief by certain people that, number one, it was done by a bunch of hooligans in the middle of the night. They picked it up and turned it around, and that, I assure you that's not possible. The other thing is that it was a political statement against the man who owned the piano factory, Koorey, who lived across the street, who they turned it around so the horse's rear end was facing his house because he didn't donate money for it.
Yes.
Those
So
kinds of
stories.
things. A lot of
stories.
stories.
And then the French-Portuguese thing came into play too.
yeah,
Yeah.
So
the
I
French-
think if you're Portuguese, you hear that it was
Yeah.
for the French, and I think if you're French, you hear it was for the
yeah,
Portuguese.
yeah.
But the interesting, what was
It's a good story.
yes,
though. Yeah.
yes. And what was interesting is that originally the picture that you have on the book, the horse is facing downtown.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the way is now, the horse is facing Eastern Avenue.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, I just noticed after the book, I went there and I took a look at the statue. The name Lafayette still not moved from the original place. So they exactly. So they changed the top, but the name still facing downtown.
Yeah, which is funny.
So-
Wouldn't it be harder to move the statue than move the placard?
Exactly. It's just take the ladders and put the ladders on the other side. But it's interesting because when you're driving on Eastern Avenue, you have no name because the
Right.
name is on the other side, facing inside the park.
Yes.
So the small things that after, and I just noticed after the book, after I read the book and I saw the picture, that's something. So I still discovering.
There's two
Fall
pictures
River.
in the book, one above the other, that shows you the way it was in two different shots, one from horse days and the other one from the late 40s, early 50s, and it's the same shot looking down South Main Street at the Academy building. And that's a fascinating part of the book because you're like, oh, I'm looking at the same thing, and look how it's changed within its own, not even adding a modern picture about what it's like now. But, you know, the sad part, I think, is that Fall River used to have theaters, lots of live performance space theaters. We were on the circuit, meaning shows would open in Boston for out-of-town tryouts, right? Then they would go to Fall River, then they would go to Providence, and then they would go to New York. We got all the big names here. They also, I mean, that's amazing. That's long gone. There were movie theaters. One of the buildings that you were interested in most recently was
Yes.
a landmark
Yes.
of film, a grand movie theater that was built in the city. Hotels. There were hotels everywhere. There were like 3, 4, 5 hotels in the city. So can you imagine having that kind of, I don't know, place for people to go, restaurants, those kinds of hotel amenities, people coming to the city? Because in my opinion, Fall River has one thing going for it that other cities just do not and never will: location.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
We are easy access to the Cape, easy access to Providence, easy access to Boston, easy access to New Bedford. We're perfectly situated.
Location. Yeah,
Yes.
Newport. And
Newport.
Rhode
That's what I
Island,
was
yeah.
trying to think
Yeah,
of.
Newport, sorry.
Newport. Oh, thank you. It was like, no. So, but that's what we need. And if we built some hotels, I think people would stay here to go other places, and while they were here, spend money on restaurants and spend money at the Battleship and look for things to do within the city. So, I don't know. I wish we could get just a hotel downtown. That would be fantastic.
And I think you had tapped on this, and I've said this before, it's that tipping point.
Yes.
What is going to knock us over to that point? And, I think that's the frustrating part for a lot of people, especially myself, that, every year we keep on hearing we're going to develop the waterfront, and nothing happens. We're still in the same spot. So it's like, when is this going to push us? Because we do have a great city and we have a lot of potential. But it's
But the
just getting
greatness
there.
of Fall River, I think, is the people. I would say more than anything else.
No,
I think
I agree.
I think there's a. I don't know how else to define the city except the people that live there, because so much of the history is gone.
Somebody once told me, and it kind of makes sense, and I will ask for your opinion. He said that the waterfront cities that has waterfronts always start from downtown up, from waterfront up, and our city it's the other
the opposite,
way.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. We coming now into the waterfront.
Well, the waterfront used to be. I mean, so it used to be a live waterfront. It used to be industrial. It had, Bowen's Wharf, and the coal came in, and the mill was down there. The American Print Works was down there, and the Firestone was down there. So I mean, there used to be a lot of things happening there. So now that that's gone, and buildings have been torn down, and there's just blank space, and then they're remediating some of the brownfield that's down there that was caused by some of the old industry that was down there. Once that's completed, coming from Florida, I have a Florida story. We had Jacksonville used to be a pit, just a horrible place to go. The city of Jacksonville, the downtown area was dangerous. It was uninviting. It was not some place you chose to spend some time. They had a developer come in, and they built one of those malls on the water. And I'm not advocating that, but that's what happened. They built one of those malls like in Boston, right on the water, several stories high with restaurants and shops. And it started the revitalization of Jacksonville. And Jacksonville now is thriving, it's interesting, people go there, and it has a waterfront as well. It has the river that goes right out to the sea. So other cities, Baltimore, it happened to Baltimore. Same thing, it was a dive, sort of hellhole kind of place, and then a developer came in, and it started from that. But it's hard to get anybody in this economy, I think, to invest that kind of money, because it's going to take billions of dollars. A Walmart's not going to do it.
I know. And that's not a half an hour show. That's an hour show.
Yeah, I hear ya.
which we don't have it. But let me just add this. I saw your presentation at Niagara Neighborhoods.
Very good.
Thank you.
I liked it.
Thank you.
I think that you should open to the public that wants to attend the presentation. I think you did a very good job. And one thing that I wish we could bring it back, and I'm going to ask you to talk to us about, is the train that was to start at Sandy Beach and bring people across town.
The trolley.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love. Wouldn't it be great to have the trolley come back?
Can you tell us a little bit about that part of the presentation?
There used to be trolleys in the city, a large trolley system. They originally were horse-drawn trolleys, and then they became electric. And so there was a trolley system. It was the mass transportation of the city before buses. And the automobile killed the trolley system, because once people could get in their cars and go someplace without having to wait for a trolley, without having to spend money or look at the timing of a trolley in order to get someplace, the need for that as a transportation system sort of went away. But there was a trolley system that was owned by a consortium of men who built what's called trolley amusement stops. There was one at Sandy Beach, and there was one in the north end, and it was called Forest Hill Gardens. And it's the end of the tracks on both sides. And they wanted you to ride the trolleys on the weekends when you weren't going to work. So they built these amusement parks to market their trolley system. And Sandy Beach was like a big deal. And so was Forest Hill Gardens, but it didn't make as much money. It lasted only 2 years, but it had all the amazing things that you could think of. But Sandy Beach was something to behold. It had a massive roller coaster. It had a dance place. It had restaurants. It had picnic areas. And swimming, and outdoor activities, and it was a happening place, and everybody went there. And then it burned down, and then the hurricane. So, again, another myth. Everybody says the hurricane of 38 kills things, right? It's like, well, what happened to? Oh, it was the hurricane of 38. It's like the pat answer for everything in the city, but the hurricane did take away a lot of shoreline, but it didn't kill a lot of these things. They were dead before the hurricane came.
But the presentation, it's very all put together, because it has a lot of pictures.
Yes.
And that's really what makes the attention. People pay attention to the pictures, and you go over the details on the pictures, so people could recognize even some stuff that's still around today. And that's why I like the presentation. I'm going to give you some time to ask questions too.
Well, what one aspect, Stephanie, did you learn out of writing this book that you didn't know beforehand?
Well, I guess it's what I mentioned before, which is that the city is consistent in its inconsistencies. I guess it's never been a progressive city. It's always been a very conservative city, I would say, a conservative in terms of keeping it sort of the same, and the same people involved and the same people benefiting from it. So there's that that sense of. There's knowing that it's going to always be like that for some people is a good thing, but then for people who want more development in a certain direction, it's not necessarily a good thing. So I did learn that. I learned about the river and the pollution that happened to the Quequechan River, and that industry created this horrific thing with the pollution and the human waste that went into the Quequechan River, and raising the temperature of the river to, at some point, 120 degrees, and killing all the life in the river. And people had told me memories about that, what it was like to be in that river at that time. So I guess the best thing that could have happened was it went underground, so it could clear itself out. The daylighting of it would be a remarkable thing, because there are falls. It's 127 feet drop. I think it's 127 feet. So there would be waterfalls at the end. Can you imagine waterfalls?
It would be really good. I mean, and I was kind of amazed when I did read the book. I didn't realize it looked like by reading the book that the pollution was probably comparable to what you'd see in a third world country. That's how bad it was.
Yes, it was really bad. I'm surprised we didn't have cholera outbreaks. Seriously. Seriously bad. But it was man attempting to make money off the river, not worrying about the river itself, not worrying about the natural resources. You were talking about stuff that's going to happen to the neighborhoods or events. There's 2 outdoor events this weekend too. There's the bike ride, the historic bike ride that's being done by Mass in Motion, right? Yep. And then there is a walk in the bioreserve, a monthly walk that's done through Green Futures, and you can find information on that on greenfutures.org. And I'll be there Saturday morning. We do our walk. It's a couple of miles into the wilderness, because half of Fall River is a forest.
Yeah. No, it's true, and those are really good. I've been on a few of those. the
Yes,
Green Future
you helped me on
walks.
one of
Yep,
those
those
up
are really
a hill.
fun. And I think even with that, people don't realize when you get out there,
It's
that
beautiful.
Cut Hill, we went up the
Yeah.
tower. I mean, it's actually, you're in Fall River.
Yes,
so I
you
think
are.
that was a real, good thing to see.
Yes.
There were good things. But, getting back to the pollution thing, I remember when I
Yes.
was probably like in 8th grade, and I went to Camp Welch, which was in Asona, and they'd bring us down the Taunton River. And this was probably like 1980, 79.
Yeah.
They brought you to a point in a motorboat, and they showed where the waste came up in
Ugh.
Fall River, right near the battleship. That raw sewage was coming up. So, even up till like 1978, we were having that problem.
Right.
And that's why we're having this combined sewer overflow, and the clarity of the river has really, changed. So, I
Yes.
mean, that's a good thing.
There are good things,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, so there are good things. But, I have to say, after reading it, it did put a good light. I think that, and, Carlos, we've said this before, that we're our own worst enemy in this city, saying that we're no good.
Yeah.
Who would want to come here? And you just attested that people from Australia and the UK
Yeah.
and Ireland and Portugal.
Well, when I
and all
moved
these
here, they
places come
said
in.
to that, why would
Yeah.
you move to Fall River?
Matter of fact, the person that's selling the Liz Borden house,
Yeah.
that's up for sale, it's somebody out of the country. It's interest in the house.
Oh, really?
Oh, I hadn't heard
Oh, good.
that.
Yes.
Who? Do you know?
I don't know the
Oh,
person.
tell.
I will tell you off camera.
Well, what country?
But
Yeah, what country?
I think it's Australia. if I
Australia?
don't-
All right, see.
Yeah.
And that's
So, but
other side of
I'll
the
have
world.
a nice neighbor with an accent, a different
so
accent.
we want to recommend people to buy your book.
That's a good idea.
Where they can find the book.
They can find it online through Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble. You could also buy it through the Fall River Historical Society. Walk in, they have autographed copies. And you can buy it locally at Barnes & Noble and Schwartz's Hardware.
Wow, excellent.
Yes.
So Barnes & Noble in Dartmouth, right?
Yes,
Okay, excellent,
yes.
excellent. And,
And the news place, Newsbreak.
Newsbreak in Swansea?
Yes,
Okay.
they have it as well.
I'm sure you're going to do some presentations out of different neighborhood
Yes,
groups.
yes.
We would like to be informed when
Sure.
you're going to do your presentation, so
Sure.
we can
Yeah, we can announce it.
it, and we want to ask people to go
Yeah.
and see your presentation.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks a lot.
Stephanie, it was always a pleasure. Wish I had an hour to talk. For me alone, not him, for me alone. But I want to thank you for.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It went by real quick, Stephanie.
Thanks,
Thanks
John.
for coming.
Yes.
Thanks.
That's it.
Yeah,
One
this
more
is
week.
it. Yep, another week gone by, and the next show will come quick again.
Exactly.
So until then,
Sure. And the next show we will have Mr. Godet from
Maplewood,
the
right?
Maplewood
Maplewood.
Neighborhood Association.
okay,
So
excellent.
until next week. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night.